Corona versus allergy symptoms. That's what we're talking about tonight. Now, what I'd like to do is just kind of poll those of you tuning in. How many of you actually have problems with seasonal allergies? Because that's actually one of the first questions that you really should be asking right now. If you're not typically a person that has spring allergies, then the likelihood that you're suffering from them now when you haven't in the past is probably somewhat diminished. So if you never really did have spring allergies, then you might actually be coming down with something. But if you've classically suffered with spring allergies year after year after year, then this show is trying to help you to differentiate. So if you've struggled with seasonal allergies, just chime in and say, yes, allergies for me in the box. And that kind of gives me an idea for who's suffering and who's not suffering. Okay. So let's talk about one of the things that I wanted to talk about too before we get into corona allergy symptoms. I want to talk about the difference between morbidity and mortality. I've got a slide on that for you as well. We're going to throw that up on the screen for you. But the reason why is because coronavirus morbidity rates are quite high. What does morbidity mean? Morbidity is not whether or not you're going to die. The difference between morbidity and mortality, for example, is mortality is, the percent of people that die from the illness. Whereas the morbidity is how bad the symptoms are. So it's the actual quality of life or the symptom severity during the illness. So to kind of think of it that way, it's kind of the easy way to differentiate. Morbidity is the symptom severity during the illness. And this particular virus, the morbidity, in essence, though, it's a very strong morbidity. This coronavirus is taking people out for several weeks at a time. So like your traditional cold or flu might knock you out for a few days, might knock you out for as long as a week. This one has a really high morbidity rate, and we're looking at 2 weeks. A lot of people are down for 2 weeks, before they make their recovery. So morbidity, the reason I'm mentioning this is because the morbidity rates being as severe as they are, for some of you might be overlapping with the beginning of allergy season and confusing you as to whether or not you're still down with a cold versus whether or not you're actually starting to manifest the allergy symptoms. So again, this particular virus, very, very high, very, very long morbidity. Not so much, from a mortality, you can read online and you can look at some of the studies that have been done, but I've seen research that shows that the mortality rates of corona are anything from 2% to as high in some areas is over 10% and as high as 14%. So again, I think this is something that's going to spin out as we know more and more how many people actually have the virus, how many people are actually infected that don't know they're infected, because I think that's part right now what's driving up the mortality rate in some areas is we just don't have the testing to test the people that have the illness. So anyway, morbidity is a very, very long time, and because this time framing, if you've already been down and you're currently down now, and now we're coming into the allergy season, there might be some overlap between the symptoms of allergy and corona. And if you know what they are, it might help you kind of take some action steps around it. So let's put up on the board, let's put up the symptoms of the coronavirus itself. So if you're looking on the screen right now, what you're seeing are the symptoms of corona or COVID-19. And so these symptoms, largely headache, cough. Coughing is a symptom. One of the big, so let's just write these down. So headaches, coughing, we got fever. Many people are developing chills, body aches, and pains. There's general malaise and pains. These are a large part of the symptoms that people are experiencing. Now, beyond that, I mentioned fever. I mentioned chills, sweats that come with that as well. So it's kind of the in and out. The fever kind of ebbs and flows. It comes and goes. This is very hallmark right now of what people are experiencing as they're going through coronavirus. Now, one of the other big ones is that it impacts the lungs. And so difficulty breathing, shortness of breath, wheezing, coughing. Again, these are kind of lung-based symptoms combined together. So impacting the lung. And again, the long term of this illness from the mortality perspective is it's when it hits the lungs super hard, and that's what is actually killing people. So these are your standard kind of coronavirus symptoms. Now, there's some research that just come out from China and published last week that showed that some people actually manifest initially with GI symptoms. So I'm going to put that up here. GI symptoms, this is things like nausea, vomiting, gastrointestinal bloating, or pain. So again, this goes back to many of you who maybe have a leaky gut issue or a gluten issue and you don't know about it. The GI symptoms are something that Chinese researchers are now reporting on. And I saw a case, there were a couple studies last week, but I saw one study that said this is actually the initial onset for many people. So for some, the symptoms that start first are those GI symptoms. Now, one other one I'll put down is this can start, aside from the GI, starts in the throat. So just like a sore throat for some people is where this thing begins and kind of what they're manifesting. So now we look at these symptoms, right? So look at these symptoms. GI symptoms, sore throat, body aches, difficulty breathing, fever, chills, headaches, and cough. Now let's compare that to the symptoms of seasonal allergy. So I'm going to put another slide up on the board so that you can see some of these things. So allergy symptoms, there's some overlap here, right? So allergy symptoms, headache, cough, right? Allergy for a lot of people creates difficulty breathing. Now, other symptoms of allergy, real common symptoms of allergy for this time of the year, especially in the spring, the watery, the teary eyes, the running nose, the itchy throat. The nausea can occur as a result of the mucus backslide. So as you're producing lots of mucus, it can slide back and create a postnasal drip that creates a gastrointestinal or a stomach irritation or a nausea. So these, you see a lot of overlap with these different symptoms. And then as well with allergies, sneezing. A lot of sneezing, during allergy season is a common hallmark. And then beyond that is things like hives. So this is like more the severe allergy response where your body or your skin is breaking out in rashes or hives. And so there's, again, going back to the overlap, the headaches, the cough, the difficulty breathing, the nasal drainage, the mucus production, the nausea. These are all symptoms that overlap. So corona and seasonal allergies have that kind of dual overlap with those two, or with that set of symptoms. But what is unique and what's different with this coronavirus that you really want to pay attention to are the fever, right? The chills, the body aches. These are generally, it's not that you can't have body aches if you're having allergies, but generally speaking, these are the three kind of hallmark symptoms that differentiate an allergy response to this coronavirus set of symptoms. So the other thing that happens that we didn't really write down, but I think I'm going to go ahead and mention it, is because for some people, the symptoms are severe fatigue, and this is another hallmark to coronavirus. So again, allergy symptoms can be severe fatigue, but this coronavirus is knocking it out of people a lot more than allergies typically would. So that would be another thing. So again, the chills, the fever, the body aches, and the very, very kind of debilitating fatigue, the type of fatigue that puts you in your bed and you don't want to move, you don't want to get out of bed. Like that's the kind of fatigue that coronavirus is doing. So if you're starting to manifest with these 4 symptom groups, that's one good way to try to differentiate yourself from that. And the reason I even bring this up tonight is because a lot of you are wondering, some people say, well, if you're getting sick or you think you're coming down with something, like self-quarantine, keep yourself locked away at home, don't go out in public, don't try to spread it to other people. And I know that with the recent announcement, they're working on getting up areas where you can go get tested just through drive-through centers where you can drive your car through and get tested. So, fever, chills, body aches, severe fatigue, if those are your symptoms, then potentially pursuing whether or not you have it, and when these test sites and test centers are set up, that might give you an insight or a clue into maybe you should be one of those people that considers getting tested. Now, if you're just generally hovering around a lot of these other symptoms but not having these kind of 4 that I've starred on the board for you, then you might consider the fact that you could potentially be struggling with seasonal allergies. Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.